Hi everyone, we are here at our first stop on our first bus tour, make-a-thek bus tour, which we just started today. And our first stop is this beautiful atelier from Katharina Forster. And I'm very happy that I can introduce her now about the exhibition and her work. The exhibition is called Fashion Revisited. And yeah, so maybe you can introduce you quickly and your work, and then also one sentence about the exhibition pieces which we see here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katharina Forster, and I'm a visual artist. My artist name is Me and My Hands, and that's predominantly the way I work. I use my hands and do add craft in my artworks. And Fashion Revisited is a work based on tea bags and clothing labels. And I've sewn one clothing tag onto one used tea bag, referring to the more than 1,000 victims of the Rana Plaza accident.
Yeah, the first thing I was asking myself when I saw the Fashion Revisited exhibition was why tea bags, and also why have you chosen the Rana Plaza disaster for the topic of your work?
I chose tea bags because they have been used, and I'm in a sense misusing them. And I have been using tea bags since 2010 in my works, like up and down. And the first work where I used tea bags was tea bags in combination with razor wire and or barbed wire. And I was playing or working around the idea of someone setting a boundary and other people overstepping the boundaries. And in that specific artwork where I used the tea bags for the first time, I was dealing with rape and eventually resulting pregnancy. So the tea bags in the shape of like a cushion and being so fragile, and with a barbed wire he can easily tear them. It was the perfect metaphor for me, where human being is being not respected and boundaries have been overstepped or even then exploited, coming to this series. So that's why I use tea bags. And the Rana Plaza topic, there are different streams which lead to this one. But the decision of creating one artwork for each of the people who died in this accident came up in 2020 during the lockdown, because suddenly referring to single death of people was so up on everyone's mind, but no one actually spoke about the people who died before, just to make us look nice. So I thought, no, we can't just moan about, or I don't know, there was a conflict within myself. And also, I couldn't deal with those numbers every day in the news today, 6 people, 100 people, 80 people. So what does the number mean? And then I thought, I need to find a number, or I'd like to find a number to understand the number and the amount and the volume and the masses of death or dead people. And also, for me, it's easier to work as an artist with something which has already been, rather than with something which is. So with the lockdown, it was too fresh, too new, too not to grasp at all. So I couldn't work with that one, but I had to choose something which I somehow could better understand.
So if we look at the each piece and all the tea bags we see here and in the frame in the suitcase which we bring with us, then you can see also this diversity and the variety and this massive flood of stories and countries behind. How was it for you when you were sewing on these labels? Have you been also thinking about in this moment directly when you were, for example, reading "Made in China" or "Made in Nicaragua"? Have you seen in front of you then the people sewing it, or what were your thoughts?
One thought is definitely surprise of, I didn't know. Oh. And the second thought is somehow because I like traveling and I like this um, world or this earth, I'm just amazed that I've got items. Well, I'm not sure if this particular item is actually made in Nicaragua or whether it's just printed somewhere else. But let's say things in my hand which come from the whole world, and it's also like it's like traveling without needing to travel. I just love it when I'm in exchange with different countries.
Yeah, and yeah, basically you do have the whole world in your hands, and you you sew the pieces on, and then you can see in which countries. And that's also the intention behind Fashion Revolution, the campaign. So one of the first hashtags was "Who made my clothes?" And then we started, and we also wanted that everyone is asking the brands which they were, where it's actually done and from whom. If you could explain or describe your exhibition, Fashion Revisited, in 3 hashtags, what would it be?
Well, the one is Fashion Revisited. The second one would be Made by Hands, and the third one, Love Our People.
Yeah, it's such a large number, no? 1,134 people were dying at the Rana Plaza disaster, and many, many more were injured. And this is still, until now, one of the biggest industry accidents happening in the world. In the history, actually. I wonder how long it takes to collect 1,134 tea bags, but also the labels you were sewing on. Because you can see, maybe we can also show one of your frames so you can understand a bit better the work, how it's done. So 1,134 tea bags sewn with labels on by hand or by machine? By hand. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the process, how long it took you to sew, or was it like a longer process? You started and then you continued every now and then. How was it going?
Cool question. It took me from the idea till the finish 5 years. Looking back, it was an ongoing process. I had my little bag with my thread and needles, tea bags, and clothing tags, and I took it with me like my phone almost. So wherever I was and there was a moment of time, I would just take out my bag and start sewing. They could have been after breakfast, still chatting with everyone. I was just sewing while I was talking or listening to everyone. And then eventually I thought, okay, it's 4.5 years. It would be cool to finish the project. So I counted all the existing finished artworks, and then I knew I had to have another 150 to make. And that's when it became more intense for me. And then I've also become more picky with the clothing labels, so I went through my wardrobe and decided which ones can I cut off my own clothes. Otherwise, I think you asked where I got all my clothing tags from. Often when I spoke about this project, people would immediately take a clothing piece off, and we looked at the label, or they even left it on and they said, "Here, cut this off, please," and then I was allowed to cut it off. There are people who are very sensitive, and they usually cut all the labels off their clothes because it feels itchy. So they said, "Oh, cool, then I can just keep them." And then I got an envelope given with lots of clothing tags, clothing labels. Also, I've got a dear person who went through when he went on a walk and he found leftover clothes like in doorways lying around or next to those clothing disposal boxes, and he would just take his scissors and cut out those labels for me. So I had many people who helped me with the whole project.
Yeah, and also the clothing labels, these were the traces in the Rana Plaza, in the where the dead people were buried at the Rana Plaza building. So these were one of the signs, actually, which companies have produced there. But I think I liked it very much when you said that you just brought them out everywhere, and then you started also conversation. I think this is also something which we want to create with make-a-thek, that we build up the community and we build up the space to talk with people about certain topics like circularity, for example, fashion and craftsmanship. So making something with by hand and then talking about topics on a completely different level. I'm sure that there have been a lot of conversations around the fast fashion topic. Has there been one story in your mind, like a situation or a story you want to share with us?
I don't have a specific one, or what came up first in my mind are those where people actually showed me their jersey and said, please cut this off. So this was the most heartwarming response to the work I'm doing. And as you said, I loved conversation while I was making and then talking with the people, and also having something to show, not, oh, what are you doing as an artist, but just doing what I like doing my art, and then through the art come into conversation and contact with other people. And envelopes sent to me by not strangers, but people I probably posted on WhatsApp or something, and they like, suddenly I received an envelope with like 10 or 15 clothing tags. So those moments were the ones which I remember most dearly.
Yes, very interesting, and also I am really happy that we are able now to take bits and pieces, some parts of your exhibition with us on the make-a-thek tour, and I would love to also, use the exhibition as a conversation starter when we go to different places. And I'm sure we just need to create the moments also for one of the next Fashion Revolution weeks to have your exhibition exhibited, because for us it's still like a moment we need to remember, and we should talk more about it. And it's for me also, also when you see the tea bags and the traces in the tea bags, no, you can interpret so much into the colors and also the life which happened, which was before there. Maybe you can also tell us, if you want to tell the viewer of your artworks also a political intention behind, or is it that you want to touch them more with feelings like grief and anger and to see how they react on it? How is your artistic approach to that?
Thank you for the question. Whether this art is a political statement or not is an interesting for me, because sometimes I think most art is political, and also it depends on what you mean by being political. So for me, also political is the way we want to live together and how this is guided and organized. And I think my main intent is to actually show the number and the amount and have a moment of, oh dear, I didn't know, or oh wow, like an astonishment moment. And then what the person looking at the artwork, what thereafter comes, I would even say I don't care. But it does something. If people see the amount of works, and if they see the amount of handwork induced or needed for this, and also the simplicity. It's just a tea bag, a used tea bag, and it's just a clothing tag. So this all together makes a moment of maybe astonishment, but maybe surprise also, of curiosity. And that does what most people who looked at the work, they carry this interaction with the artwork back into their daily lives. There's a slight change of how they look at their clothes or how they drink the next cup of tea. And I love those moments.
I think that's also what we want to achieve with Fashion Revolution. We want to raise awareness about these topics, and we want to also reach out to the mainstream. But I think, yeah, it's also quite versatile, your artworks, because you have single pieces, well, like 1,135 little artworks, and it depends how you frame them or how you place them, and then you have already a new way or a new emotion you could raise. If you just explained us about the frame over there, that this maybe you can tell us a little bit more how you placed the tea bags in this frame here.
Sure. So I noticed not all the clothing labels actually mention on the label where the clothes are made from. So here I've picked out all the ones where it definitely says where the clothes are made from, and I ordered them alphabetically. So it's A in the top left, and then the last one is W at the down right, and goes from A, and then you go the alphabet. Yeah, so those are all the ones which are part in my collection. Just one of them. It's not, there are more of made in China or more of made in Morocco. And coming back to the political question, there's one made in the GDR, there's one made in Western Germany, so they're also like old labels. And then starts with made in Africa, and then back to also made in Vietnam or made in Western Germany.
Yeah, it shows us all the production countries and also so many stories which are sewn on that, and they are sewn by you physically on the tea bags. And I think it's in my mind there came up so many questions when I just look at them, and I think this is also something I hope we can take on our first make-a-thek tour with us, that we take some of the stories and we can also place them at the different cities and regions where we are heading to, and then maybe this is also for us a good way to start a conversation about producing, about making, about fashion, actually, because this is also one of the main intentions which we have with make-a-thek and which we want to explore now in the next 14 days. So I would say thank you so much for your time today, and I hope that we can bring the spirit you put into all of these little artworks, and we can bring it to the Eastern Germany parts and Czech and also to Poland, and create there some reflectional moments. Is there something like one little hint you have for the customers, for your viewers, or for the people who watch now the films? What they can maybe do in their everyday lives to change something, to wear more consciously or more sustainably. Maybe you have also one thought or one idea out of your daily life, which you will share with us.
I'd love everyone to check where their clothes are made from, and then maybe, just check at night what have I worn today, in which countries were my clothes made I wore today. And the second task I would introduce here is to dress yourself with clothes made only in one country, for example. Or dress yourself with clothes just made in your own country, which is difficult because Germany, we have less clothes made in Germany. But play around with where your clothes are made from, or dress in alphabetical order. Start with made in China, go to made in DB, whatever. But you get the point. Just have a different order in your wardrobe and the dresses you wear.
That's amazing. There's so many cool challenges for the next Fashion Revolution week, actually, or for our tour. But I have not so many clothes in my suitcase with me. But it's interesting task. Is there? So I think I really like your artworks. And is there some other projects you're working right now on which is also linked to this topic? Or is there something you have in mind which would be maybe the next step, or you would still continue to go a bit more deeper into the direction?
There's so many new projects on my mind. What I'd love to carry on one day, or is the one which I showed you just now. Oops. Yeah, so where I ask people if they're willing to have a full body portrait taken by a photographer. And then when they were in the photographic studio, I asked them to take off their clothes unless they're made in their home country. And some persons stood there naked, others were at least allowed to still wear their pants. But that's an interesting project, which I'd like eventually to repeat. Another project which is on my mind is linked to the war between Russia and Ukraine. I came across that the Russian army is luring people from Africa into their country, offering them a visa and permanent residence. And when they get exploited and sent in the war in first front, first row. And since I've studied art in South Africa, and somehow I feel very connected to this whole continent. So this is another project which is on my mind, and I'm thinking of not using tea bags this time, but using wax. I'm only using wax which has been used, which doesn't make sense because it hasn't been burned yet, but leftover candle wax from private people from bars in Berlin, and also churches donate me. They burn down candles, and I melt the wax and create new artworks. And I'm intrigued by the material and the malleability of the material. But I don't know how this project will eventually come out. It's always new to me too. So, yeah.
Okay, wow, that's very interesting, and I really would love to follow up on that as well, even if it's not linked to fashion. One more question. I have a link to your the artworks of Fashion Revisited. Would be how has been the process and the work you've done with the tea bags and the labels and the thoughts about where it has been made. How has this influenced your way of dressing? Has it?
I've definitely been aware of what I'm dressing before. So I definitely was. It started when my kids were young. That I just didn't want to buy everything made in China. I thought, no, I'm here in this country. I want locally made fashion. So that's when we had, as a family, for a couple of months, a ban on buying things made in China, unless China is the only country who produces those items we need. So that was an interesting family project. Other than that, I just hate going shopping. I just hate it.
That's also one more point on the agenda why we should swap more and buy secondhand and choose maybe other possibilities rather than buying new stuff. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here and sharing my work on your tour.